Chuck and Margo have a big shovel. So you've paid down from $307,000 down to $74,000 by your early 30s.
And we're at 54 now because I paid off another 20 the last month. Wow.
But getting through medical school gave Chuck some big blind spots. What's the interest rate on the student loans presently?
Well, that's the issue. It's nothing.
Oh, it's 0%.
Yeah.
We want to show them a better way to do money and set them up for a life of abundance.
Welcome to Making a Millionaire, where we help millionaires and millionaires in the making build their great, big, beautiful tomorrow. I'm your host, Brian Preston, joined by Mr. Bo Hansen.
That's right. We are so excited that we get to do a deep dive into the financial lives of listeners just like you. And today, we have Chuck and Margo joining us. Thanks so much for hanging out with us, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Of course, we're excited.
Awesome. So for those of the folks out there watching who don't know you guys, give us a rundown. Who are you? What's your family situation? What do you do? Give us like the quick bio.
So we are. Do you want me to talk professionally,
All of
personally,
it.
kind of all of the above?
How old are you? Got any kids?
All right,
What do
yeah.
you do for a living? All
We
the
are
stuff.
in our 30s, in our early 30s. We have a little one, 2.5 years old, just
that's
one
awesome.
kid. Yes. We live on the East Coast, sort of mid-Atlantic area. Both of us. Chuck is a doctor. I'm a psychologist. So both did quite a bit of training in our 20s, yes, and we were out in the Midwest for all of that, and then moved back east. That's where I'm from originally, and it was in the marriage contract.
I love it.
But no, it's been great. I mean, we have a big family out on the East Coast that has been very supportive and been great to have around now that we're back.
So y'all were both in school for like a million years. Is that where y'all met? Is that how y'all came together?
We actually met. We were both living in the DC area right after undergrad. So like I had just graduated. He was 1 year out, and we were both doing. It was very, very nerdy. Both doing.
By the way, you're on the great place for doing nerdy stuff.
Research fellowships, and we were in different labs, totally different areas, but we met through friends.
Loving the lab. I love it. That's awesome. Oh, that's so fun. And so you're a doctor. What kind of medicine? What kind of doctor are you?
See, I'm an anesthesiologist.
Anesthesiologist.
Okay. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Now, as you guys were great, you filled out a form kind of telling us a little bit about who you are and your background. It sounds like growing up, as it relates to like money and finances, y'all had two very different backgrounds. Can you kind of walk us through what was your financial childhood like, and like how did that form your view of money today?
And how does that impact y'all's relationship, too?
So I would say I'm the anxious out of the two of us, to say the least, and it's from my background. I mean, I grew up mostly with my father after like second grade and on, and we had a great growing up. We had everything we ever really needed, but I would say like low middle class. Yeah. But he always had a great job, and I think as soon as we were getting older, like he definitely advanced in the financial world and started doing really well. One of the principles he always taught me was like, when you go to work someday or when you wake up in the morning, you want to be happy.
Yeah.
And so like I always had this kind of pounded. He was never like the happiest guy in the world to go to work, and he just did it to make ends meet.
Not as I do, right?
Yeah. And so like I always had this like, I really need to figure out what I want to do. I want to figure out what I want to do, but I also want to make good money.
Yeah.
And that's not why I ended up in medicine. Like I never went to medicine to make money. I just am a nerd at heart. Yeah. So that's how I ended up in medicine.
She laughed a little too hard at
that. But yeah, I don't know why, but my childhood created a lot of insecurities. And I still have a ton of insecurities.
Were there traumatic events that you went through as a kid, or it was
just scarcity and doing without?
I don't know. I mean, because to me, it wasn't like, I didn't feel like we had a scarcity mindset, but for some reason, I just always had this like insecurity. And I don't know why, to be honest. Like,
what do you mean when you say insecurity? I'm trying to figure out, is this like fear of like you're too conservative with things, or fear that there's not going to be enough money, or fear? What? Lean in, tell me what the fear is.
Yeah, like fear of not having enough money.
Okay.
And so I think, and I mean, it probably started. I always got a few handshakes here and there from my parents in regards to like a couple $100s when I was in college. But I pretty much went through college by all private loans, or private or federal loans. I worked in the summer, and like to go into medicine, you had to do research. So therefore you made no money in the summer. But I would survive on like $3,000 for the whole year of college.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And so I was always
college
like,
great when you could actually do that.
So, but I think it's incredible to say. I mean, it was not only driven by fear, but it was necessity to get you through that period. Because when I was reading your notes, you pretty much were on your own post high school. And you've been to school forever. We all know school's not
Yeah,
cheap.
yeah.
So that I can understand some of the mental things that we're going to hopefully help you unpack. But there was a time and a place that probably offered a lot of value in you reaching the goal that you've accomplished. It's pretty cool in some ways. I know adversity, is not desired, but there are times, I've shared that I started my first business after my father passed away. And that was a horrible thing, but I got this clarity of trauma. Growing up with scarcity sometimes can create a superpower. Now, we got to unpack it because it's not healthy if it stays that way forever. But I love that you shared that.
Okay, so what about your background? What was your financial background with money like?
Yeah, so we had pretty different upbringings when it comes to finances. I would say I was extremely fortunate, not that you weren't, but... from an upper middle class family, had grandparents who had done very well and were able to finance all of their grandchildren's education.
Oh, wow. That's noble.
Which took just a huge burden off of my parents' generation. Not to say that I wouldn't have been able to go to the schools that I went to, but, didn't have that same burden of loans and things like that because my education was paid for. I always had a job, starting in high school. I was a lifeguard. I always worked. But it was more working because that was a value in my family rather than necessarily a necessity.
Trying to have money to pay bills.
Yeah, exactly. And so when I worked, that money was all for me. I got to use that money how I wanted to. I would say we talked very little about money growing up. To this day, I have no idea what my dad made or makes.
Right.
My dad, in a lot of ways, interestingly, even though he came also from a very comfortable background, has much more of a similar mindset to Chuck. Sometimes in my family, there's a little inside joke about their similar tendencies on some of these things.
Yeah. Well, if I know your parents didn't talk to you about money, but did you feel like your parents talked to each other? Was there good communication between your parents on what y'all had, what they had and did not? Or did you feel like money wasn't even shared that much there either?
Yeah, it wasn't really shared that much either. My mom tells this story, and if my parents watch this, they might get us. But
we'll clean it up to where we don't mess up Thanksgiving. But I still think the share could be very beneficial because of stuff in relationships.
Okay, love you guys. But my mom tells this story that she one time opened up a bank account because I forget why. Oh, because she felt like my dad was micromanaging her. Right. My dad was he gets very anxious about finances, and she always felt like he made her feel like we didn't, she would spend and there wasn't enough, even though that absolutely was not the case. It was, we were fine. And she was like, okay, well, I'm just going to open my own account so that I don't have you micromanaging me. And apparently that went over quite poorly. And so she closed the account. But yeah, it's interesting. My dad, even though we've, thank God, always been very comfortable, I grew up with him having that anxiety, and I think as an adult, I've not completely boomeranged the other way, but
you don't have that same level of anxiety. So as you guys got married and started a relationship together, was there friction there that you came from different backgrounds? Or even when you think about the childhood you're trying to create for your 2.5-year-old, which childhood do you want to emulate? Do you want more of your childhood or more of your childhood?
I think that our core values align really well, so we really haven't had friction around it. We've been able to kind of navigate it together, and I think we have pretty good communication about finances. I think we also just balance each other pretty well, and it's kind of he has some really strong strengths and some not as strong areas of growth, we'll call them. And I have some really strong strengths and some significant areas of growth for growth.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good beginning of the game.
Yes, but they happen to fit really well
Yeah,
together.
like for some reason, we like literally mesh about everything in life very easily in finances, even though like I'm very anxious. Like expensive purchases, for instance, she knows that I'm not going to pull the trigger.
Right.
Yeah.
And
So
she'll
good
just
for it.
literally just sit there and tell me to buy it.
I love it.
I remember
Because she
what-
knows you probably need that. Like
Yeah.
you need someone
Yeah.
to kind of coach you along in that.
I want to pull out a little bit more because you said y'all communicate well about finances. Tell us a little bit about that because we talk about all the time going over annual net worth statements and other things. What tools do y'all use to communicate money back and forth to each other?
Every like 6 months or so, he's like, so I think we should do like a little finance date night.
Love it. I love
It's
it.
a favorite kind of date.
I would
I wish
say
we
it
did more.
happens 50% of the time, so probably we're
Yeah,
talking
once
once
a
a
year.
year.
Yeah.
But I don't know. You've made me do like kinder questions before,
Yeah.
and not made me.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, I think we've also had like, so like when I came across the kinder questions, it was like one of those like aha things to me where it was like, how do we want to live life? And we've had a couple hiccups along the way. And every time we have a hiccup, we go back to the kinder questions and like create a goal. Our goals for the year are short term, long term. And
And how do you feel after those meetings?
Good. I'm always glad when we've done them. I mean, the other thing is like he said before we started, he's been really interested in finance, and so like we talk about it casually a lot. Like he'll share with me what he's learning about different things. He'll like take courses, and then like almost every night when we're just like hanging out and watching TV, like I'm watching some trash reality show on Netflix, and he's like doing our finances and like dropping information. So like we're communicating about it frequently on a less formal basis too.
That's
I'd
great.
say.
That's great.
Well, it sounds like you guys do mesh really well, and obviously thus far in life, you've been able to do pretty solid. I mean, you said you're in your early 30s. You both have fantastic jobs, but you've done a great job of like building and accumulating assets. You guys were kind enough to share with us a net worth statement. We thought it'd be valuable just kind of look at, okay, where are you guys today to sort of level set for the audience. And what you can see is right now your total net worth is a little over $550,000, which is amazing for a couple in the early 30s. You currently have in cash about $60,000 or so, about $37,000 in savings accounts, and another $21,000, $22,000 in I bonds. What made you do I bonds? Where'd that come from?
so this is my first year out of residency, and I had like really a surplus of cash, and I bonds were like 8%.
This is back when that whole arbitrage,
Yeah.
everybody was trying to get the 9 to 10% out of the I bonds,
and so
you
I
took
was going to
advantage
do it
of some
for.
of that.
It was kind of my emergent 2-year investment too, where I knew it'd be good for at least 2 years,
Yep.
and if I needed it in 2 years, I'd pull it out. So that's where that came from. So
Okay.
it's actually part of it's mine, part of it's our son's. You know.
Oh, okay. How much of it is like earmarked for your son?
Just half and half.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, it's liquid.
Got it.
Yeah, I'm always the old man on the front porch that picks on things. And Bo and I had a little debate on this because he was generous and let you put that under cash. I don't really consider that cash. I think that savings, and that's why it did surprise me because y'all's income is very strong. Now, to your defense, and I even made Megan, one of our producers, go behind the scenes and do the math to check it because I was like, there's no way they're living off of that. But you are. You're very, that is 3 months bare bones of expenses, right? On the savings
yeah.
3
accounts.
months of living
But
expenses.
I consider there's different platforms of having emergency cash, and so I look at it as like our taxable account is also.
No, that's
know-
access. That's an access to cash.
But I'm saying, what I'm just saying is like if I really am burning for like if we came into this crazy emergency,
Right.
like that's my mindset. You know, and
Can
so
I be honest? My stomach dropped a little. I'm
sorry.
because
I'm sorry.
I walked. I don't know. I wrote a book called Millionaire Mission.
Haven't read it yet.
And in there,
just came out.
Now, but financial mutants all make this mistake. I made this mistake. This is why I know it's a trap, and I get worried for everybody out there that thinks if I just have a brokerage account, I can always get access to that. But I always, when it rains, it pours. Meaning bad things happen in groups. Is that now you're a doctor, so hopefully we're always. I don't hope we need doctors, but it's a reality. We'll need doctors But a lot of times your real estate value will go down, your stock market value will go down, and the job market will get crushed, and it will happen all at the same time. There's not diversification when it comes to crisis. Cash, I know it's not sexy. I know it's not one of those things that gets people excited that you're having this money sitting over here, because you as a mutant think that I can maximize. But it's just, don't fall into that trap, because when you go underwater in the emergency, you're going to crave oxygen. And that's what your cash reserves are. They are the oxygen you breathe. We all take it for granted while we're above water, but as soon as you go under, it is priceless. It really is.
That's good advice. And we've sadly already had to, last year had to dip into the whole thing almost.
Right. And
So,
you see how quickly you can
you
can liquidate those assets, and especially if something bad happens and you do see the brokerage account go down. So you have about, depending on how you count it, somewhere between $40,000 to $60,000 in cash. And then you both are doing great in terms of how you're accumulating retirement assets. Margo, your Roth has just under about $60,000 in it. Chuck, yours has right at $60,000 too. You have a 403B that you're participating in, Chuck, that you have about $10,000 in. I'm assuming, is that a new account?
That was just residency.
That was just residency. That's an old account that's just kind of hanging out. All right. Your 401k, Chuck, has about $168,000 in it. Margo, you have a solo 401k with about $56,000, and then you guys do have an after-tax brokerage account with about $222,000 in there. So just when we think about the three tax buckets, you guys are doing a great job, right? It's almost like you listen to a financial show that really encourages building up distinct tax buckets, right? It's awesome. So we love seeing that. Obviously, that's a great place to be here in your early 30s. And then you do have your primary home valued at $735,000. And then there was an angel investment of $80,000. What's that? Where'd that come from? What are the details on that?
To kind of keep it superficial, it's brother-in-law's business.
Okay, so it's a family business that you've.
Yeah.
Did you invest in, or it's like a family business that you're just participating in?
Or is that a loan?
We invested, but using money that I inherited.
Yeah.
Right?
Got it.
Yeah.
Awesome. So it's a closely held family thing, not something you did outside. So it's kind of part of more estate planning deal going on with the family.
Well, I mean, it's a big company or business now, and it's
so
growing.
This is going to pay off at some point, it sounds like.
Well, it started, there's only probably, it's already paid at least likely fourfold likely.
Oh, wow.
Because what did we invest in?
A little over 20.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's actually the value of it.
This is the other side of the angel investment.
Good for you.
Good for you guys.
Y'all are the opposite side of most, family stories about loaning money or investing. It turns into a woeful tale. Yours is actually, angel investment's the right name for it. So we'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
All right, and then now you also have, I'm going to go through the debts first. You have a mortgage, about $670,000 owed on that, and the interest rate is 3.88, which is wonderful. That's like a super low mortgage rate. There's a lot of people in the country right now that wishes that was their mortgage rate. You do have student loans, currently about $74,000 of student loans remaining.
But put a pin in that. How big was that student loan? Because you were in school forever. You didn't really get financial help after high school. Yeah. I can't imagine you came out of medical school with $100,000 of debt.
No, it was $307,000.
Wow. So you've paid down from $307,000 down to $74,000 by your early 30s.
And we're at 54 now because I paid off another 20 the last month.
Wow. All right.
But
noted.
You gotta have some meat on the bone for me, because I have some things I'm going to try to encourage you on, and you're over here just going to town.
Now, remind me again.
Crusading against that debt, obviously.
Because I want to know about that. What's the interest rate on the student loans presently?
Well, that's the issue. It's nothing.
Oh, it's 0%.
Yeah. So it's the federal. This is all federal, and the federal government's been in shambles for.
So you're paying. I just want to make sure I'm understanding. You're paying down 0% interest.
100%.
Okay, just want to make sure that there's 0% interest.
I know.
Yeah, 0%.
Okay, just making sure I'm getting that. Okay,
and the loan that you see there too, that went towards that initial. Part of it went towards that in our home purchase.
Okay.
And so that's a yes.
Okay.
So
I can just sense it in your face, Chuck. I'm going to pick on you about this in a little bit.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, when I got married, I bought a set of golf clubs because I knew my wife probably wasn't going to let me make those type of purchases. I feel like you paid down that additional $20,000 on that student loan because you knew I was going to have questions later.
But I don't know if you followed it. 3 months ago, right? They were accruing interest, and so now they're not.
What was the interest
rate on that?
Average, a little over 5.
No, right around 5%. So and you're in your early 30s.
And do you consider 5% high interest or low interest?
No. But it's
a low interest, isn't it?
Big mental burden to me.
Okay, we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, I love it. Mental burden sometimes can be incredibly expensive, right? And we're going to dive into that. And then also, so you said you have $150,000 outstanding loan at a 3.18% interest rate. So there's another piece of debt sitting out there.
But that's kind of unique, isn't it?
Super unique. So it was really like a sign-on bonus.
Yeah.
It's forgivable.
Oh, okay.
After 7 years, and the interest rate's actually covered from the company, but I have to pay taxes on that 3.8.
Oh, so it's imputed.
It's more like a
income to
golden
you.
handcuff to keep you there.
It's like you read about where I work.
And then is that taxable? Is that 150?
It's taxable in
Okay.
50,000 aliquot. So after 5 years, 50, 6 years, another 50. Then the seventh year is the 5.
But that's what's also in that taxable account is you just been keeping it in an account.
No, that went right to my loans. Except for like 115 of it went to my loans, and then we used some of it for the house.
Okay.
Awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
So pretty decent debt situation in terms of like what's manageable right now when you look at the total amount of debt you have relative to the total amount of assets. And then you do have some funds for the kids. You have about $75,000 in 529s. That's seems like a pretty substantial amount. Where'd that come from?
So that was a gift from my parents,
Awesome.
from my grandparents. Like it's sort of
just
worked
paying
its
it
way.
forward, doing the same thing that was done for you. That's great.
Wonderful.
And we often say, from a legacy building standpoint, I always say memories over stuff. And also I think education is another thing. If you're a person that is blessed and has good resources, those are great things to kind of invest in the next generation for.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to 529s and saving for college, are you thinking that, okay, one day we'll want to be able to pay for full education for our child? What are your thoughts on that?
I think we're going to have to, sadly, just because of our income limit. Like
You're going to have to pay. I mean, but like you did not, you said you had to go out and get loans to pay for your education. Your education was paid for. Have you guys talked about, as it relates to your kids, how do you want to navigate that?
We haven't totally crossed that bridge because our child is 2.5.
Right.
I do think this is an area that like we've shared our preferences with each other, and it's my strong preference that we pay that. I felt like it was the biggest gift of my life that I didn't have loans around my education, and that was provided to me, and I still had a job. I still had like important values in terms of working hard instilled in me, and still behaved in a way that was in line with those values. Like, and I think there's ways to instill those values without creating stress around debt.
Right.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but my perspective is that he's more like, oh, well, like you want him to not like earn his education, but want him to be the one investing in his
Have some
education.
like skin in the game when it comes to it.
Yeah, and sort of be able to like teach the values of hard work with the financial piece tied to those values. Whereas like to me, they can be more independent.
Yeah. And I'm like, we haven't like broken it down. I know there's a couple different approaches. Like some parents like say, here's a loan and, make their kid feel like they're paying for it, but in the end it's going to be forgiven.
Right. Yeah.
For me though, like I would like to cover it. I mean, like we have one child, like we have income where, and honestly, ideally, not to like rush ahead of this conversation, but like by the time the little guy is ready for college, I think I could be retired.
Yeah. You might
And
be
so,
financially independent at that point.
And
anyways.
so like I could work for another couple of years to help the little guy through school or something. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah. And who knows where our situation is going to be in a few years. So
I love it.
And there's a lot of runway on that for y'all to have more communication, figure it out. I think just naturally having that gift of paying it forward is going to do some pretty amazing things just because we do have a big runway. Compounding interest is going to carry a lot of that. But we'll see if there's some way we can at least kind of find the intersection of both of y'all's desires. I did have one more question because this is great to go over all this. But how do y'all handle your money? Are y'all joint? Are y'all separate accounts? How do y'all handle that part of it? Because I didn't see when I was looking at savings accounts, I didn't see separate savings accounts. Most of these retirement accounts, your government forces you to make those separate. I'm getting the feeling that y'all do everything joint.
Everything's joint, and also just for protection wise, like tenants by entirety for as much as we can.
Okay.
Awesome.
Was there any discussion or any struggle on that, or was that just always from the get go? You knew everything was going to be joint.
No, we kind of always knew from the get-go. I think it's been interesting because when we first met, also for my graduate training, I was paid to go to graduate school.
Oh,
so
nice.
I have a PhD. So they paid me rather than me paying them.
Yeah.
So
Doctor.
the doctors. And so it was interesting because when we first got together, I was like the money maker, which is like laughable now because my income was not very high. Yeah. But with that, like there was probably like for the first, 6 years of our relationship or so, or 4 years of our relationship. Yeah. Like I was the one who was like financially bringing more in. And then it switched. But for some reason, I think that like sequence of events, it was just like, it makes financial sense for both of us.
Level set, right?
Yeah. To just come together.
And by the way, for young marriages, especially first marriages, y'all didn't have a lot of assets coming into the marriage. I love the merging everything together because it takes the power out of the money as well. Now, look, we've been doing this long enough. We have some complex situations which sometimes facilitate and require that we legally do some separate things. But I love it when couples get to kind of look at the assets together because it does, as you shared, Margo, you made the most money in the beginning. Now we have Chuck making the most. It's nice that y'all are separating, sharing everything so nobody can say who makes the money here. It's looked at as joint resources for both of you, and that's very healthy.
I did have one other question on the net worth statement. There's an emergency fund for your child that has like $1,300 in there.
Oh no, that's not an emergency fund. That's just like me. Like I just put $100 a month away for the little guy.
For like, is it like first car? Or
I don't even know. I just I don't know.
It's just $100.
Just investing in that kid.
Yeah, just pouring it out.
I don't know. It's like when he leaves, like I don't know.
Awesome. Chuck, I've done the same thing with both of my kids. Now I have 2 daughters, and I was always thinking this was to ward off a fight with my wife about weddings in the future.
Yeah.
Was that $100 a month? Didn't mean much, but it was going to turn into a large sum. And it has worked out, by the way. Those accounts are big. So, maybe this is what's going to help your child get their first house. Or I think that's not a bad thing.
And I've also thought, like, when we're talking about, like, how do you want to set your kid up for the future, right? Like, the way she was raised or the way I was raised. Yeah. And I keep thinking about this, like, UGMA account or something of that sort. And that's kind of my, like, temporary... I don't know what I'm going to do.
Like you're doing that, trying to figure out what you're going to do. You're doing something until you figure out the plan.
If that's not structured as one of those custodial accounts, you might want to consider it so you can take advantage of at least the tax benefits of the child's lower tax rate because uncle's going to like you a lot. Yeah. You have a really good income, so you and the uncle, y'all are tight. So we ought to get some separation there on those assets.
Yeah.
All right, so we know kind of your backstory, and you did a great job of kind of laying for us out where you guys are today. What are your financial goals? We know where we are today. What's the ultimate thing that you guys want to work towards? Like, what are the goals that you guys sit down and discuss when you do have these super awesome financial days?
Break it down into 2 things. Like, really, it's like we just want to enjoy life.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so work-life balance is honestly like number 1 for us. And so
how's that now? Are you working all the time or are you never working? How do y'all balance that presently?
We're getting there, I think. We, didn't finish up our training that long ago. Started into a job. I started into a job that work-life balance was not workable for me at all with a newborn. Ended up leaving that job and like pivoting into more of the private sector. And then we got just like slammed in 2024 by like a bunch of health things and like it was just a really, really tough year for us. And so I've kind of been like really up and down in terms of like what I've been able to do in terms of work, managing the baby, managing like my own self.
Sure.
So I definitely feel like there's room for growth for me in terms of work-life balance that I feel like right now, we were just talking about this morning, actually, that like the content of what I'm doing, I love. And also like, I don't know, I feel like maybe there's like more earning potential for me on the one hand. On the other hand, like it's extremely important to me that like what matters to me on a day-to-day basis has become very clear to me this year. And like, it's extremely important to me that I tick those boxes each day.
Yeah.
And that includes things like spending time with Chuck and our son and moving my body and doing like a leisure activity and doing meaningful work. So like I'm trying to balance.
How do you balance all that together?
Figuring all of that with also like earning an income that I feel like is representative of like my education and what I have to offer. He can speak to his, but like briefly, I'll speak to his before I let him speak to his. But he found a job that has amazing work-life balance and that like really like
It's a hidden gem. Yeah.
It really is. And like his hours are amazing.
Awesome.
He is compensated really well. The one thing is that there's not that much like intellectual flexibility in the job, which gets to him because he's like the type of person whose brain is always like we have invention books in our house, like all the things. Like
Meaning it's not challenging for you. It's kind of like a clock in, clock out type thing.
I'm not trying anesthesia. I do outpatient anesthesiology, so like things happen. Like I'm not trying to like down talk being an anesthesiologist. It's a very like mind.
Yeah,
it requires a lot of brain power throughout the day. But I like am always trying to improve things. I'm always trying to like change things, optimize. And so for me, like sitting in the OR does not allow that pathway. You know what I mean? So like that's like the one thing that I'm currently in some really cool opportunities to like, with leadership and like trying to create different projects. But it's just a long process with the group I work for. Yeah. Which is, I think that's part of the case everywhere. So like, the mental stimulation, that's what I'm hoping for work. But honestly, like at this point in life, like I'll be honest, I love work. I love my job. I could see myself working forever. Right. But I also love so much more than work.
Yeah.
And so,
I'm a hobby guy.
Yeah, I'm a hobby guy. And my work allows that. Like I get out most days by 3:30.
That's great.
I'm there at 7 or 6:30, but like I'm out at 3:30. I can go take care of myself or go take care of the kid or hang out with the wife. Like, I mean, there's so many things that I can do and I have no call or no weekend. And so like I literally am.
Wow. You break through all the things that you hear bad about being a doctor.
Yeah, I have an insane job.
And so how do you tie a financial goal to enjoy life, have more work-life balance? Is that just a matter of getting lifestyle as down as low as possible? If we can live off of $2,000 a month, then we can have all the work-life balance we want. Or what's the financial connection there to being able to do that?
I think it's a good question, right? Because I think it brings up like, what is your, like down the road, like where do you want to be?
Yeah. What's your why?
And so for me, like at this point, I want to save so I can actually have financial independence. Like I don't care about the retire early part. I just want financial independence like within 15 years. But at the same time, I want to have the opportunity to guarantee setting aside this amount of money aside, but then spend freely, do things freely. Meaning, we're trying to plan a trip to Europe this year for 3 weeks, which I already have the vacation set. So now we're just figuring out what we want to do.
Yeah.
And so like, that's like really step 2 for us is like family time, work-life balance, and then like really traveling. We want to start traveling.
I love it.
And so I think creating the avenues to do that and like, that's what we haven't done this before. So like this is a new thing for us is like, how do we create like securement with finances from what I'm making to put it towards trips, to put it towards our goals.
Yeah.
Do you have a number, like you said, financial independence in 15 years? Have you defined what that is? Like, what is financial independence for you guys? Do you know the answer?
I'm like roughly shooting for like 200,000 of income annually.
200,000 of income.
So roughly 5 million.
Got it.
Well, yeah, but like obviously I'm open to be educated. That's pretty
awesome.
Standard.
I think most people, because you hear all the time, a million's not what it used to be. Well, I say, well, what do you think? If I push people on what are you really looking for, it usually falls into that 3 to 5 million. So I think you're in solid ground there of what people consider financially comfortable. Also, Margo, you said something. You talked about that you had some health struggles yourself, and in my brain, I immediately was like, I always like to share with people, money's just a tool, and it sounds like you had some clarity from trauma yourself, so. And that's what I always tell people, health is wealth too. And it's better to kind of get that education, especially with life education, especially with your son, and you get this clarity. So I just can sense that you have some peace about the fact that the money doesn't matter as much now that you get to spend the time and do these things.
Yeah. And I'm lucky I enjoy the work I do. So I don't I'm happy to keep working. I want to be able to, for me, I think there's a balance between setting us up for financial independence, which I know is really important to him.
Right.
But also living our lives
Yeah.
now in a way that like is comfortable and is in line. Like I am not on board. I'm not on the like live $2,000
Sure.
a month or whatever it is.
Right, right,
Like,
yeah.
you know,
That's not the idea of financial independence. Getting
no,
that. Okay.
like we're not like
Yeah.
sacrifice everything now so
Sure.
that, you know, we can live it up later. We're like, how can we live it up now and
And later.
be comfortable later?
I love it.
How do you feel about that, though, Chuck? Because I mean, I get the feeling that you're more of a scarcity embracer.
Yeah.
And it sounds like y'all live around family, and you're doing things. Do you feel like sometimes that y'all are doing too much or trying to keep up with the Joneses? How do you how do you feel about all this?
So I think when we initially moved to the East Coast, yes, keep up the Joneses is like real, and for sure, and we've definitely caught up with parts of the Joneses.
But also when you move somewhere, right, there are tons of costs
Sure,
of
of
moving.
course.
Like it's just an expensive
Yeah.
time. And we moved from a place that was less expensive to a place that's more expensive. So that doesn't help.
But I mean, overall, I've kind of loosened the purse strings as long as I'm meeting that, like, 30% gross income investment is like what our goal is.
Okay.
And so if we meet that, I don't care. Like, I'll be honest, like, I don't care where the money goes. And if it just like all of a sudden disappears, like
That's the beautiful part about pay yourself first. Is that
Yeah.
you give yourself the freedom to spend after you've
Yeah.
done all your saving. I think that sounds
Are you a
great.
pain spender? I mean, and maybe I'll ask this of Margo. Do you find that he's tight? Do you feel like he's tight, or is he really letting go of the purse strings like he just said?
I think.
And don't worry. I mean, we can tell he's a
You
great
can't
guy.
offend me.
Yeah, no. Oh, no, I'm not worried about it.
But we're trying to help him.
Yeah,
And
no, I'm
you
not
know,
worried about offending him. I'm trying to think of like how to capture him in words. He agonizes over every purchase. So like at the end of the day, he will buy the thing or get the thing, and usually
Takes a
it's
long
like
time.
what he said. I'll be like, buy it. But the inner turmoil that he experiences for every decision, and it can be something that's like, not that $150 is trivial, but like it's not like a
Not a life-changing amount.
Yeah, it's not a life-changing amount, and he just agonizes. I don't know if that answers your question.
That helps. And that's what we talk about, majoring in the minors sometimes. Look, forever I said I was a tightwad. But I got to a point in my life where I was like, this isn't healthy, and also I started feeling guilty that this was part of my persona. And then once I started loosening up because the money was starting to work longer. Now, look, we're going to get in a minute that y'all are still at the beginning. So I don't want you to feel
super
like you
beginning.
can loosen this too much.
yeah.
But I do want to give y'all permission is that once you do the things that are on the financial priority checklist, it should also give you permission to enjoy your money, because it's back to money's only a tool. And that's why I love creating a financial plan or a system that lets you know you're checking the box, but then you can free your mind to say, look, I'm doing everything to reach these goals, but I also know that there's going to reach a point where I can't take it with me. So we've got to balance so we don't have regrets about that. Did we live our 20s, our 30s the best possible way so we don't have regrets when we're in our 50s and 60s and we can't even do as much as we thought?
Yeah.
So I'm hearing these goals: enjoy life, work-life balance, financial independence in 15 years. Want to travel. What else? What other financial goals do you guys have?
Again, for me, like education for
Education for
Kids.
your son.
yeah.
And like if the opportunity arose, like for future generations too,
Yeah.
like,
Okay. Potentially larger family type stuff, right?
yeah.
Awesome.
And I think gifting to us is important. I think I find that we spend freely. If friends are in need, if anyone's in need, we just kind of throw money towards
Being able to
them.
help
And-
other people out.
Yeah, so I
Be
think
generous.
And I
love
think down the line, like more substantially, like giving to organizations and stuff like that will be
Yeah.
important
I love
to
it.
us.
It's interesting. I did not hear
Yeah, here we go.
be debt free.
Yeah.
Like I didn't hear hey, get my student loans paid off. Hey, get out of the knock this stuff out. That won't.
I love that Chuck looks like he's being held under ransom whenever we talk about this stuff. Do you see his eyes cut over?
Well, so because before today, like I have that planned already. Like I guess like
it's a foregone
until
conclusion.
I meet you guys, and then I'm like, what do I do now? So for me, it's like I already have the year planned out finances, and so like, I mean, I'm open to suggestions of improvement. And to me, though, it's like by the end of the year, my debt's going to be gone, except for the house, which to me, I'm not too worried about the house.
Okay.
Can I ask you one question, though, is opportunity cost? Because everything in life is an incremental decision. Do you go left? Do you go right? And, and those small little decisions that you don't feel like really mean much sometimes can have huge impacts. And so do you think about that at all? Or is that just get the debt paid off and that's it?
I mean, I do, but like, I guess if I look down the long run, if I'm saving 30% or whatever, I mean, and I guess that's the issue too that I'm looking into is my 30% savings also includes
all that debt payoff.
Yeah, for the year. And so I know in the long run, yes, it's going to hurt a little bit, but I guess the question is how much. If I'm paying off my debt in 2.5, 3 years.
What a great question.
What
a wonderful question. How significant, because you were so kind. You said, I've kind of got my whole year planned out.
Yeah.
And you kind of prepared for us, like, hey, here's my financial order of operations that I'm working through. And it was great. So we were able to look at it. Okay, hey, I've currently got my cash covered. My emergency fund is good. I've got my 3 months of expenses. We're at the income level. We can't contribute to Roth directly, but we have an account structure that allows us to do backdoor Roth. So we're each doing that, $7,000 and $7,000. And we're maxing out our retirements between the 401k, between the two 401ks. We have 23.5 each going into the 401k. So we're saving $47,000 there. So that's great. Well, in addition to that, I've got this $100 a month that's going into my son's account. We called it an emergency fund because we didn't know what it was, but going into my son's account. And then we're going to pay off the student loan. So $76,000 of our dollars are going to flow into the student loans to knock them out this year. And you asked the perfect question. Well, why doesn't that make sense? Isn't getting out of debt a good thing? Isn't that noble? Is it significant? Well, we kind of... In everything that we do, we like to think about optimization. How are we making the absolute best financial decisions that we can make that align with the long-term goals that we have? And when I read your goals again, I hear enjoy life, have work-life balance, have financial independence. I did not hear be debt-free as soon as possible, get out of these student loans. And yet you are prioritizing that as though it is like a super high goal of yours. So we thought, okay, well, what if we laid out sort of what you're currently doing to build towards your goals with what we would probably recommend you change or some things that you think about that might have some impact on your financial life. So we wanted to lay it next to ARFU, our recommended financial order of operations. And the first thing that we think is that immediately we think your cash reserve should probably be higher than it is now. Right now you have about $30,000, $40,000 in cash. We would like to see you add another $34,000 to that, taking to about $60,000. So that way you have liquid cash, 5 or 6 months of current living expenses in a high yield money market that you get to tomorrow in the event that something happened that you got to. Off the is it going to drive you crazy to take $34,000 and put it in a high yield account instead of put it on those student loans?
No. I'll say no.
He said no. He hasn't seen the rest of it though. I mean, there's going to be more here.
All right, so let's keep going. So then next, after you do that, we love you doing the backdoor Roths. We want to see you guys continue to do that. If you guys, especially your income, can take advantage of tax-free opportunities, you ought to do that. We still want you to max out your retirement accounts, 23.5 for each of you. But there is one thing that is incredibly interesting and intriguing about specifically your retirement plan. Inside of your retirement plan, you probably noticed there are 3 different ways you can contribute. You can do traditional pre-tax contribution. You can do a Roth contribution. And yours has that unique, magical after-tax contribution. And whenever your plan allows for an after-tax 401k contribution, there's some really exciting savings opportunities there. Again, you were kind enough to share with us that, hey, based on the way that my plan is tested every year, I have the ability, I can do, in addition to the 23.5, I can do another $19,000 into the after-tax contribution portion of my 401k. Well, if you were to contribute to that, that then gives you an opportunity to convert those dollars or do an in-service rollover of $19,000 into a Roth IRA. So instead of just being able to put $7,000 a year in your Roth, you could do $7,000 plus another $19,000.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty
which
significant,
she
right?
has that opportunity too. And like when she starts making enough money, her solo 401k has that built into it too when we need to.
So then the question becomes, okay, well, how powerful is that? How much does that matter? How significant is that? So we said, okay, well, let's just take this one single year. This one single year, if I just do a $19,000 contribution into a mega backdoor Roth, how impactful, if I'm 34, how impactful can that be over the remainder of my life? And you can see that if we assume an 8.6% rate of return, and that's just assuming, again, mid-30s, 8.5%, seems reasonable, just that singular contribution by the time you're 50 could be worth $75,000. By the time that you're 55, it could be worth $115,000. By the time you're 60, it could be worth $176,000. So every year that you are able to do that could be almost another $200,000 in that financial independence bucket. And so when we look at opportunities you have available to you, paying off the debt sounds great, but if you pay off a 0% interest debt, do you know how much interest you save?
Yeah, a lot. None.
0%, right? Like that's So, okay, let me pause there for a moment. Give me some thoughts, feedback. Oh, I already know this, guys. Oh, this is silly. Oh, that's insignificant. Well, tell us what you're thinking.
I understand. Like, it makes 100% sense. Because, like, last year the first year I started working at the job, I did do the backdoor.
Right.
Mega backdoor. And then the interest rates started coming again. So I was like, I want to pay this off.
Sure. Is there any chance, and obviously if your employer is watching, you want to work there forever, obviously, but there's a chance that your job could change. You could move somewhere else. How about weighing in the opportunity cost of, I can just do the mega backdoor or anything. What if you change jobs or maybe the plan changes and all of a sudden that opportunity is not there anymore?
Yeah, it's real.
Now you've missed out on $19,000 of tax-free money. Brian, have you ever in your life not put money in tax-free that you regretted
that's
later
what
on?
I'm sitting over here because, by the way, we did you a favor by only cutting it off at 60.
Yeah.
I guarantee if we added another 5 years, because you know how compounding growth works, is the longer you add compounding growth, and I'll go ahead and just ruin it for you, your favorite investment basket is going to be Roth. You know why we love Roth assets? They're completely tax-free. Yeah. They grow tax-free. The government doesn't get to put that horrible tax rate that they're hitting all of your income at on those Roth assets. So if you took this out to 65, because you would still own it at 65, it's going to be closer to 300,000. What I'm worried about for you though, Chuck, is that you're so close to leaving the school and the pain of having that $300,000 of debt, that's all you see. You have some recency bias towards the debt. I think you're going to fast forward and you're going to resemble me a little bit more and have some regrets from missing out on some of this tax-free stuff. And that's why I came up with an analogy. Now, I don't know if this is going to hit perfect. I even told Bo, I'm scared. I came up with something. I love in my spare time, I have a hobby where I love to smoke meat.
Okay.
If you barbecue, and do you know what the secret to barbecue? Because barbecue is really taking subpar meat and turning it into something that there's a reason there's so many barbecue restaurants in the South. Do you know what the secret to cooking these subpar meats is?
Teach me.
Low and slow. You have to keep the temperature low, and then you have to give them enough time that they break down the fat and turn it into this awesome piece of meat that people pay extra for and wait hours in line to get the best briskets and the pork butts and all the other stuff that's out there. But there's a mistake that early barbecue people make that I'm worried you're doing as a debt crusader. Is a lot of times when people get their brisket or their butts, they immediately start trimming the fat, as much fat as they can, because we've all been served a steak or something with a lot of gristle, and we know we don't want that, so we think it's good to cut off as much fat as possible.
Yeah.
And I think you are suffering from that with your debt. You're like, hey, I came out of school with $300,000 of debt. That felt suffocating, but now you've got this thing paid down to, at the time we got the notes, it was 74. Now you still are out there just trimming away at that fat as fast as you can. And I'm over here as the senior barbecue pit master. And I'm like, quit cutting the fat off of this thing, because you realize part of what you need is because low and slow. Now, did you guys graduate from medical school like Doogie Howser in your early 20s?
No.
You graduate. So do you think you're ahead or behind on time?
Oh, way behind.
For investing. You're behind.
Yeah.
And that's what we even have a slide on. We took your income And we built in, now, look, and this is not to say you're doing anything wrong, but it is one of those things where because you are older, because you've been in school for a million years, getting all these doctorates and everything, which is good. It's very good. Don't hear me wrong. But it's just you need to have this pressure of not only getting out of debt, but also making sure your money works for you. Because look, without a doubt, you have the income. Your shovel, both of y'all, your income is going to accomplish a lot of goals if you give it enough time. But you're still at the beginning of this, so you're acting like you can maintain wealth that you don't even have. You've got to make the wealth before you can maintain the wealth, and especially when you find out the interest rate is somewhere between 0% and 5%, and then you see that you're not even an average accumulator of wealth based upon where your income is and the amount of time. You should feel a little pressure. It's kind of like you're starting your own barbecue, but you already started this 4 hours later than you should have put the meat on the low and slow flame. So we already have to kick up the temperature to just try to speed this thing along. You've cut all the fat off of this thing, so it's going to be the most unflavorful brisket you've ever tasted in your life. And I just worry that you're going to, when we pull this thing out of the oven, because you didn't give it enough time, that you're going to have some regrets. And that's why I detailed this in Millionaire Mission, not the barbecue part, but just
you should have put that in there. It's amazing.
I have my own regrets. But it is something that I worry about for you, is that right now you think you're doing the right thing by paying off this debt. And it is noble to pay off the debt. But I'm like, leave a little fat on there so that we can focus on the time component and let your money get in there and do the heavy lift for you as fast as possible. And that's why when we were doing show prep or planning for today's show and our content meetings, I was like, I see so much opportunity, but it's the Jedi Master in me is just like, gosh, I just need him to use all that energy. You're doing the hard work, the discipline, the saving and investing, or the idea of having enough margin of 30% in your life where you didn't build up your living expenses is like an incredible superpower that's just not being unleashed. Because you're sending. If you go back to that list of their funding objectives, their FOO, I mean, look at the biggest number on there was student loans.
Yeah,
70. It's like 76,000 out of the 138. You're not really investing 30% of your income. You're investing like 13, 14%, and then the rest is going towards 0% debt. And I'm trying to be debt free as fast as possible, but I'm in the maintain wealth, which I think is the right time to do it. Don't do this before you get to made it through the make wealth phase. And y'all are still in the make wealth.
Okay.
Now, I want to go back to the last illustration to make sure we understand how this was calculated. Because essentially what we do is we take your age times your income and divide that by 10 plus the number of years and hit 40. That's how we determine like where you should be from an accumulation standpoint. So if you're going to be an average accumulator based on y'all's income, you should have about $977,000 invested presently. But the income is a relatively new thing, and you guys were in school for a long time. We actually want you to be a prodigious accumulator, which would be double the average. So our goal for where you should be based on your income would be around $2 million invested. So that's the point that he's making with the amazing barbecue analogy, by the way.
Well done.
Yeah.
Is that you do have to make up for a bit of lost time. And when we think about making up for lost time, optimization becomes incredibly important. So that's why when we think about our financial order of operations, we would love for you to then do the mega backdoor conversion and then begin contributing to the after-tax account. Because after we get through this year, you won't have to fill up your mercy fund anymore. So you're going to have a lot of money you're going to be able to plow into after-tax 401k contribution, or after-tax 401k as well as after-tax brokerage accounts. And then once you've done those things, then we think we can hit some of the other goals that you may have, like funding a 529. We estimated, and we'll show you kind of how we thought through this, maybe doing like $5,000 a year to the 529s based on some of the goals you laid out between like private K through 12 as well as paying for college one day. So that if you can replicate this, you'll actually end up at the same cash outflow, right? You're already planning on $140,000 flowing out. If you were just going to match and replicate that, this is the way that we would suggest you approach that.
Okay.
Can I make one more point? And I promise I won't belabor this.
I hope this has to do with barbecue.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
Hungry
Because
now.
that'll just make me hungry. But you see that 6 months in cash to catch you up to your 6 months, it's 34. That's a one-off thing. So meaning that for next year, the following year, if we fast forward to 2026, that $34,000 is now going to be kind of part of your discretionary pot, to do what you will with. Do you know what is not something that you have discretion on? those mega backdoor Roth conversions, the government's only lets you can't go back in time.
That's right.
You just can't. So, I mean, I'm not even telling you not to pay off your debt. I'm just saying in due time. Just don't look back and go, remember I could have put 19 and then maybe this year it's 19, but then next year you do another 19. You know that, I mean, this is the magical part of compounding. If you see the power of this so much that you give $100 a month to your son, but you're not going to put 19,000 into a Roth account that can turn into millions upon millions.
I'm blinded.
I mean, it's just like, oh my gosh, take it from the old guy who's been there and has his regrets. Please do this because you will thank yourself. Your 50-year-old version's going to have these sloppy, wet tears because they're so happy you did this for the Roth assets. They really will.
I appreciate it.
But then there's the so what? Like that's all the theory. Let's talk about the actual numbers of this because we want to define for you. Okay, if I do this, if we actually were to save in this way and build in this way, what does our portfolio path look like? Like what are we ultimately building towards when we do this? And we said, what if you guys just earned a very conservative rate of return, 6% per year? And we looked at your portfolio. You have a relatively aggressive portfolio. It's making better than an annualized rate of return of 6%. But if we just went really conservative and you guys saved at this threshold, starting at age 34 with $575,000, saving $140,000 a year in the way that we described, without pay raises, without bonuses, without saving more than that, by the time you get to 50, we have you right at that $5 million number that you threw out. If you decide to work until 55, you can see it's $7.5 million. If you go all the way until 60, you can see that now you're Deca millionaires based on. And by the way, when you get to that level, if we were to back down in today's dollars, assuming a 3% inflation rate, we believe that a $10 million portfolio when you guys turn 60 would be the equivalent of a little over $200,000 a year in today's income.
That's inflation adjusted, so that's pretty incredible.
Without ever biting into the principal. So you start retirement with $10 million, you pull that off every year. When you leave this earth, you leave behind $10 million. Pretty exciting, right?
Yeah.
But if you're going to compress your timeline, if you said, I want to be financially independent, I want to hit $5 million, I want to do that in 15 years, you got to be serious about what you're doing with your dollars and how you're optimizing the dollars. Now, you already said to us, optimization is something that matters to you, right? Isn't that, you said that, your words, right?
Yeah, no, that's like, yeah.
And so one of the things you think through is like, hey, every decision I make, I want it to be the best. Would you be okay if we kind of shared with you some things that we noticed when we kind of looked at your portfolio?
I feel mean.
No, this is a
Well, that's why he signed us up for this.
Yeah, let's go.
Because look, you were kind enough to share with us your account statements, share with us your investments, and that was wonderful. And so one of the things that we like to do is we like to do an illustration called a jigsaw puzzle, right? Where we basically look at how is your asset allocation broken down across all of the different accounts that you have. And so the way this is laid out is every column is an individual account that you guys own. And rather than showing the individual securities, we just grouped all of your holdings by asset class to show you what types of asset classes you're holding in which types of accounts. So you have fixed income investments, you have some alternative investments like real estate, you have a big blended investment, a target retirement fund, you've got large cap holdings, small cap holdings, international holdings. So not only do we have to think about the asset allocation, how you spread your assets out, which by the way doesn't look bad. We analyze that too. And if you look at your pie chart, you can see you have a pretty aggressive portfolio, which would be appropriate and fitting for someone in their early 30s. Now, you do have this big target retirement fund that you're using, and that's fine. We love that. But we would argue like part of your portfolio is target retirement, but the other part is sort of specialized. And so you're kind of living in both worlds.
Yeah.
You're getting to the point of graduating beyond the target retirement, so we can fine tune this.
And the thing that I had struggled with though is that I had to pay like a 0.3% annual fee for that.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Which was like,
yeah.
Which was like 0.3%. You know?
Yeah, all right. Fair enough.
Over time.
Fair enough. So, but okay, we'll put a pin in that.
I know.
Dollar. Okay.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you have a good asset allocation, but not only do we think about how you allocate if you are going to move away from target retirements, which you've done with the majority of your portfolio, not only do you need to think about how you allocate your assets, you need to think about how you locate them. Like what types of investments do I hold in what types of accounts? Now, when we saw this, there was one like flashing red, danger Will Robinson, frightening thing that we saw. Can you guess what it was when you look at this?
I'm guessing the Roth.
It was the Roths. So when we look at both of your Roths, you both have $60,000 in Roths. And one of the reasons why we love Roths is they have tax-free growth. Whatever money grows in there is tax-free.
So what do you probably want if it's tax-free? What do you want to happen in that account?
You want it to grow.
As much as possible.
We want
as
to
much
pour
as possible.
pour some accelerator on that bad boy. Let it grow.
But when we look at your holdings inside of your Roth, you both have about $20,000 inside of the fixed income piece, the bond piece.
And by the way, we're not against bonds, but just bonds in a Roth. That's a bold choice.
I was trying to like tax inefficient funds in a. Anyways, that's what I was trying to get at.
Tax inefficient funds inside of retirement accounts.
Yeah.
But if you're going to do that, it really makes a lot of sense to have tax inefficient funds like bonds inside of pre-tax retirement accounts, like traditional, because the Roth is tax-free forever. You want to have your maximum growth opportunities there. So generally speaking, when you look at Roths, you want to have like your heavy equity pieces in there, like the pieces that are going to have the largest amount of growth. Well, you have a lot of equity pieces, but when we look at your next largest allocation, and we're just going to use Margo's Roth as an example, you have a big chunk, about $22,000 in a REIT fund. And we like real estate, and it seems like you have taken the position. I think real estate is an attractive opportunity, so much so that I should hold it in my Roth. Am I describing that well?
Correct.
Okay. So when we think about how we allocate Roths and how we locate, we want to do what we call probabilistic allocation. I want to put the thing that has the highest probability of having the best return over the longest amount of time, right? When I look at your allocation, it looks like there's a big probabilistic scenario that you think real estate is going to perform really, really well over the long term. And then the next highest allocation would be fixed income. So we said, okay, if we were to back test this, how's fixed income done? Those two holdings, the Schwab U.S. Aggregate Bond Index and the short-term inflation-protected bond fund, how they done over the recent memory? And so we actually charted that out.
We did over 10 years.
And
That's not recent memory. That's over the last 10 years.
Over the last 10 years, you can see that the annualized return for the inflation-protected fund is about 2.3%, and on the aggregate bond index about 0.8%. Yeah. So not wonderful inside of a Roth, right? Like that's, don't mishear us. We like bonds, we like fixed income, we think they have a place in a portfolio. That place just might not be inside your Roth.
Okay.
But this wasn't your largest allocation. Your largest allocation was across this REIT ETF. And by the way, we love real estate. It's a wonderful diversifier. It helps combat inflation. It's a great holding. But when we pulled your REIT holding to say, okay, well, how has it performed over the last 10 years, annualized? It too has about a 2.8% annualized return over the last 10 years. Again, this is inside of your Roth, inside of like the bucket of assets that you want to be the best performing because you really want to maximize your growth inside.
Do you want to see the mean part?
Yeah, I'm bringing it up.
The mean part is we're going to show you, because you actually have it in your account. I mean, but the large cap, which is just basically buying the index of the economy, this ever-evolving innovation world that we live in, it would have averaged close to 16% a year.
Yeah.
So these are all holdings that you hold inside your portfolio. And we're not suggesting that you should not hold any one of these holdings. What we are suggesting is that if you're thinking about optimization,
distributed,
where you put them matters. Because can you imagine if inside of your Roth, instead of annualizing 2.8% across the largest holding, you were annualizing almost 16% across the largest holding over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
You can imagine how that compounds from now until you hit age 40, 45, 50, 55, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Have you thought about portfolio construction this way? I mean, walk us through when you go make your portfolio decisions, how do you navigate that?
So I consider the taxable account like a legacy fund because we kind of started that when we met pretty much from an inheritance. And then in regards to allocation was more based on like tax efficient versus inefficient, allocation and the fact that I wasn't willing to spend 0.3% on my 401k.
Right.
And honestly, we've only been doing this for 2.5 years now. So really a lot of this is like it's new and I'm learning. But like I'm trying to do tax inefficient in a good way. But obviously I knew that my Roth was like,
there's something special about it, but what's special?
But I mean, I was like, how can I get these tax inefficient funds in a better place in my Roth, but I couldn't figure out how, where.
Right.
And obviously that's busted into our 401ks.
I'm going to go ahead and play the part of Oracle and tell you what's going to happen in the future too. Even if you'd paid that 0.3% to the advisor to that 401k, what account do you think they're going to look at? only that 401k. Do you think they're going to look at your taxable account? Do you think they're going to look at your...
No. It's just
That's the problem, because I don't know if we can pull up your tax location. If you look at your 3 buckets, you guys actually have a really nice mix of, and if we played this forward, it's pretty nice. I mean, most people, what's funny is everybody has, just like we all have fingerprints, everybody's allocation is different. When people show up and come through the door as a prospect, we have to take them where they are. And I would be excited when I saw your 3 buckets, because this is kind of what you daydream about, is because you have a nice mix of all 3. And just, we didn't share it earlier completely. Bo gave you everybody, tips and tricks, but I want to go ahead and cut everybody off at the pass so they don't make the mistake. Is that tax deferred? That's your traditional, that's your 401ks, that's your employer match if you chose the Roth 401ks or Roth 403bs. Typically, historically, that was your tax deferred. What those things do is they're great as they grow tax deferred, just as the name implies, but when you pull the money out, it's all going to be taxed at ordinary income, just like your wages are. So that's why you got half of it right, is we like putting like your bonds and those type of assets that are conservative in these accounts, because when you pull out bonds, they pay income in ordinary income tax rates. So it doesn't feel like you're giving up anything when you let it grow tax deferred and then pull it out in income, an ordinary income tax rate way. So that's the best use for those type of assets. Now, usually those accounts are so big, you're going to end up having large cap, international, and other things too. But you at least want to make sure you gave a nod towards getting those inefficient tax items into the tax deferred. Your tax free, that's your Roth. That's your favorite child. Don't tell everybody else, but that is your favorite bucket, because not only does it grow tax free, but it is incredibly powerful from a legacy building, because your kids are going to want to inherit the Roth assets, because they got 10 years to let that money continue to grow even after they inherit it. And if they have, like I have a child that has some developmental struggles and things, actually, our Roth assets are going to turn out to be great legacy building, because they don't even have the 10-year rule if you have some of these unique things. So they're also great from that standpoint as well. So we love tax-free because it is growing tax-free, has great legacy opportunities. It's going to be the last bucket you want to touch, because it becomes your precious. So you want to be careful of that. After tax. Now this one, after tax, is kind of like your Swiss Army knife, is because it does have some tax efficiency. Like dividends can be, tax preferred. They give you a lower tax rate on qualified dividends. Capital gains, any assets you own for greater than 12 months, they're going to give you preferential tax treatment on lower rates with long-term capital gains. But this also could be your, not access to cash trap, but it could be money to where if you had a big investment that was great, like in real estate or other things. I love after tax because you can get access to those accounts a lot easier than like the tax deferred. And it also is a great bridge account if you retire early before Social Security and before Medicare and all those things kick in, or required minimum distributions. You can use this. You have all the components, but you're like we found out that we had the best athlete on the field sitting in right field instead of at shortstop. And that's really what you've done. You have all the components and everything, but you put them out there. Whereas I'm typically the right fielder. I'm left-handed. I'm hoping the ball doesn't come to me. Meanwhile, Bo, who should be playing shortstop, is hoping the balls come to him. Put those assets to work the way they need to be maximized. And that's why, back to what the point I was going to say, you might still run into trouble even if you hire the advisor for that 401k, is because you need somebody who's going to look at all 3 of these. And look, I get it. Nobody wants to spend money on a financial advisor. But there comes a point where your decisions get so big that it's just, you've never done this before.
Exactly.
So why would you want to do something on a 7, because this will turn into multiple 7 figures. You're the CEO of a multiple 7 figure, but yet you're going to let 1% blow up the whole thing. Just be careful of that. I'm not trying to, I think it is definitely a measure twice. I'm not telling everybody to go hire a financial advisor. But we do think that there does rise to a level that the complexities track you down, and you're going to need somebody in your corner that can help you out with those type of things.
So what we laid out in our financial order of operations is that if you were to accumulate in the way that we're saying to do that, when you get to age 60, that's what your 3 tax buckets will look like. You'll have 37% of your assets in tax deferred, 24% in tax free, and 39% in after tax. Well, if you can get to financial independence and have that kind of diversity in your tax buckets, you literally get to live that financially free life where you pick and choose. If you need access to money, it's there. If you want to do gifting, you have things you can gift. If you want to pick and choose what you pay in income tax, you can pull from the unique and distinct tax buckets. You guys are at the very beginning of your journey. You've already acknowledged that, but one of the great things about being at the beginning of the journey is the course that you set out on will have a big impact on where your ultimate destination is. A 1 to 2 degree change in course can have a significant change on where you land. That's why these small, seemingly small decisions like, oh, I'm just not gonna do the mega backdoor this year, I'm gonna pay off the student loans, can be impactful down the road. And what we wanna see for you guys, you have the entire world at your feet. Like you are right here in a fantastic financial situation. We want to see you maximize. We want to see you optimize. We want to see you leaving opportunities behind, like allocating your assets just slightly better, like taking advantage of accounts that you do have access to right now, because you guys are in a fantastic spot for a great, big, beautiful tomorrow. All right, what other questions do you guys have for us? What else can we speak to that might be valuable for y'all?
I have a couple questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Obviously, like you've dived down into my insecurities, right? Like, and that is very obvious, and I appreciate it. And I like taking a battering when it comes to stuff like this. So thank you. It was not a battering.
I wasn't trying to be
you were very
mean.
gentle, actually. When you were like, I feel bad about this. Like, it wasn't that bad at all, really. I did get through residencies with a little challenge. So this was actually very gentle. But so I have a pension plan at my job that. I guess that's one question that I have is like, how do I incorporate that thought process into life? You know what I mean? Like I am privileged where, I mean, I'm not vested yet. It is a substantial amount of money if I stayed for 20 years. I don't, once again, insecurity, I don't feel comfortable banking on that. But like if I could bank on it, if I had permission to bank on that at a point to actually spend more freely then, like, if we wanted to go on crazy trips or like buy a house somewhere else or, you know what I mean? Like,
do you feel like at this point of your financial life with the income that you guys have, saving 30%, because that's what we've modeled here. If you were to save 30% and we go back to your portfolio path and see the track that you're on, even with a conservative 6% rate of return, by the time that you get to age 50, doing that, you'll be at $5 million.
Yeah.
That would generate for you about $130,000 in today's dollars without ever eating into the principal. Well, when you take that and you add to it the value of a pension, well, now you have an incredibly robust lifestyle. You have tons of options, tons of flexibility. Would the alternative be, hey, yes, you can count on your pension, so just back down your savings to saving 10%? Would you ever allow yourself to do that?
You would never do
No, right? Like, so it's a great question. Well, how do I factor in the pension?
Yeah, theoretically.
What we've already like kind of laid out for you is what we would argue is base
like
case.
whatever,
And do you feel like at your income level, saving 30%, there are a lot of things that you're not doing, not taking advantage of, and the trips you aren't going? So like, we can answer the question for like, oh, well, how do I factor in the pension? But for you guys, it almost seems like that's not an incredibly pertinent question because you're already able to do all that. We're not telling you got to save 50, 60% to catch up, to make up for lost. We're telling you based on what you're doing, you're doing it. And based on the way that you guys say you spend money and live your lifestyle, you can still do all that other stuff. You already said it. Saving the 30% is the mechanism that frees you.
Yeah.
Let's go on the trip. Let's buy the car. Let's think about the second home. You're too young for second homes now. Don't think about that. You're too early. You're not at that stage yet. But at some point, you can think about that and can have that so long as you're moving along this trajectory. To go from 500,000 to 5 million over the course of 15 years is significant. You just have to make sure the lifestyle decisions you make don't pull you off of that line.
I like to think, Chuck, I want to give you the construct so you can think about this in simple terms for the future too, is that, by the way, if your employer was here or whoever structures your benefits and compensation, I would want to shake their hand because they've obviously done a really good job of creating a great benefits plan, also adding this pension and other things. All these things are set up so that you pretty much can't leave if you wanted to because it's too good. I mean, it's really smart, but there's a risk here.
Yeah.
They've protected themselves by creating this golden handcuff environment. There's still probably nothing that's in your contract that says if you screw something up or have any mistakes, they can still fire you. Yeah. And I worry that you're too close to the beginning. That it's, once again, back to, if you just put them up there, there's three. There's make wealth, there's maintain wealth, and then there's multiply wealth. Where are you at? You're definitely in the make wealth phase. You're not in the maintain. down the road, the aspirational goal is you get to multiply, meaning give it away and be very generous, but you're squarely in the make phase.
Yeah.
So don't, even though these are generous benefits your employer has offered, there's a chance you get laid off next year, you get laid off 3 years from now, that stuff doesn't work for you. So you have to save and invest right now in this moment to kind of protect yourself. So, and that stuff's going to be gravy in the future. That if all this is going to line up and you're going to have this wealth, then you're going to get this pension. Then, by the way, your pension even has a rollover option, so you can even have legacy opportunities. Because sometimes that's the problem with pensions, is that it's only based on your life or the joint life.
Yeah.
You might even get the choice. Don't just assume you're going to take the rollover or the lump sum, by the way, because there's always a math equation we like to do for clients because sometimes these pensions are so, just frothy that I'm like, no, keep the pension because the cash flow promises are really strong.
Yeah.
But I think it's too soon to count on that. So you need to be a little more scared that I've got to build these assets. And it's back to don't be paying down debt. Don't just be assuming the golden handcuffs so we can go live this crazy life.
Yeah.
When you're just too close to the starting line to have your assets working for it. Your army of dollars hasn't built up enough just yet.
No, well said. I mean, that's how I feel too. But because I'm not even banking on the pension. Like future planning, like I use YNAB as like a budgeting app.
It's great.
And I have, different parts in YNAB for investing in the future, right? Like
do you
our
both
annual,
participate in YNAB, or is this exclusively a thing you do?
It's mostly him. He shared it with me, and I looked at it for like a week. I was like, and then I actually legitimately forgot about it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Do you find, I didn't mean to interrupt your question, but I'm going to ask because I think it's pertinent. Do you find that using YNAB is valuable in helping you change your behavior? Meaning, you already know that you're saving 30%. You already know where the money's going. You're doing it. But you still use YNAB to track, okay, we went to the grocery store, so there's groceries.
Yeah.
We went to go out to eat. Does that change, by you doing the exercise, is it changing the way you behave?
I also will say, sorry, not to cut in, but I will say I don't use it independently. But like I said, like we sit on the couch and he's doing finances on YNAB, so he's asking me like, oh, what was this? What was this?
Sure.
What was this? So that he can.
I bet that's a
put
lot
it
of fun
in all of our categories. I'm like, I don't know. No, but it's good. It's a good check for me because then it does help me, track what we're spending, and then like we have different buckets like to save for vacation and to save for like we like to do like quarterly gifts to friends and like to save for different things, and we can see if we're not like meeting those goals so then we have rearranged like spending based on
that's
that.
what I feel like anymore. I think it's nice for me. It's like to really follow the cash flows because I like for the buckets that I want allocated towards, I know we're meeting that goal. And like, if I have excess income for the month, I know exactly how much I have and I can divvy it up. So I find it really helpful.
Sure.
But I find it now that we're making good money, I find it a pain in the butt to like go through every single little.
It's very cumbersome.
Yeah. To me, it provides still a good value, but I just don't feel like I'm using it efficiently.
Let me try to give you, once again, a mindset structure to kind of process this. I love budgeting when you're starting out, because I think the discipline component is so lacking for the majority of Americans that we need to kind of get the reps in to figure out how to be good with money. But there is a point, and this is back to make, maintain, or multiply. When you're in the make phase, I do like people budgeting and using apps like You Need a Budget and so forth. But there comes a point, and this echoes something you shared with us, Margo, is that I have seen very successful couples to where especially the financially minded one takes this a little too long, too far, to where they're asking for receipts. They're asking, hey, what did you spend this money on? And so forth. That
He's never asked me for a receipt.
But I'm just telling, I'm going ahead in the future. The guy being married 27 years is just reaching into the future to tell you what risks are out there. Is that there will come a point that while you're in the build or making wealth phase, this is empowering, this is good communication. But after you're getting closer to the maintain and you're still asking what was that money you were spending on, it's going to start feeling more controlling, or once again putting power back to the money. And you have to be careful of that in a marriage. And I would just have a transition point to where, and that's why Bo and I talk on the show all the time. I love budgeting as you're starting out, but we eventually transition into cash, what we call cash management plans for scarcity. And I talk a lot about this in Millionaire Mission too, and the fact that I think what will happen is once you put enough of your assets on autopilot, meaning that your retirement savings are going in monthly, your after-tax accounts being funded, that's why we love talking about this saving and investing 25%. Once you know those boxes are being checked, it should give you the freedom to just know who cares what happens with the rest of this, because this thing's on autopilot. And you have the muscle memory because you did all the hard work with the budgeting at the beginning. You don't have to keep the control and all these things that create the drama in the relationship if it's not necessary.
Yeah. I think we're getting there, and like now that Margo's income's like increasing a little bit, we really have like more flush cash now too.
Right.
Where like initially it was just really when we started off,
You had to make sure there was enough.
It was just, do we have enough to do X, Y, and Z?
And I'm not saying cut it off right now, because like I said, y'all are squarely at the beginning of this thing and in the make phase. So, Margo has to put up with it a little bit longer on it, but be honest with him in the communication. If it gets to the point where you feel like it's control, y'all have those discussions, because that's when you probably need to graduate from, doing a full budget to more of a cash management, especially if y'all do your checkup as a couple and you look at your financial life and you go, holy cow, do you see those guys, they use 6%, which is super conservative. And because I think this is going to be much bigger than even what you've shown, what we've shown you. So this is probably going to be even rosier for you guys down the road.
So I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So mine is more about like the mentality and psychological part, because that I think is that's just something that, I think is really important and that I worry about on his behalf. Do you guys have like recommendations, like you said, and thanks for walking us through all of this, like, we're in the early stages, but for the most part, right, like there are changes we can make, but for the most part, like we're on a pretty good track.
We're doing
Absolutely,
great.
yeah.
Oh, do you guys have any recommendations, like on the anxiety component of it for him, like in the stage we're at now, but then also moving through those other buckets of maintain and multiply?
Yeah.
Psychologically, the scarcity, not enough, like he probably would be so happy if we came in here and you guys were like, okay, you have to save 90% of your income and only spend, $10 a month. He'd be like, see, I told you. Like psychologically, I think that would be easier for him to hear than to hear
you're doing
like
okay.
You're doing okay. And how do you find that balance between, right? Like, we are at the very beginning of this. None of us are fortune tellers, so we don't know what the future is going to hold. But like, how do we walk that tightrope of like enjoying life now and setting ourselves, meaning like not being so stressed out about finances while setting ourselves up for, a good future.
Yes, I've got two quick psychology things that I think would be incredibly valuable. One is review a net worth statement every single year together. Do your net worth, everything that you own minus everything that you owe, and go through it together. And in that exercise, I want you to do two things. I want you to write your goals down in the same way that we wrote it down. Hey, here are our long-term goals. We want work-life balance. We want to be financially independent. We want to be able to help our son out. We want to be able to be charitable and give to others. And keep that at the top of your net worth statement. But then every year when you review it, do your annual goals. Hey, what are the things that we want to accomplish this year with our finance? Hey, we want to make sure that we give away this much money. We want to make sure that we go on this many trips. We want to make sure that we have this experience. So every year when you do this, not only are you keeping track of the long-term goals you're working towards, you're also making sure that you're defining and clearly articulating what your short-term goals are. Hey, we want to create a memory with our son doing this. We want to change someone's life in this way by doing this. If you can do that every year, what you're going to notice is two things. One, you're going to see as you progress each year how you're moving closer and closer to those long-term goals. Well, then if you also track those short-term goals every year, you're going to see how many of those goals you actually did accomplish through time. So you're going to begin removing the anxiety around, oh man, we're not doing things today. No, look at all the stuff we accomplished last year. Oh, look over the last 5 years, all the things we're able to do. And yet, here we still are moving toward the ultimate goal that we want to have for our great, big, beautiful tomorrow and our great, big, beautiful today. So that's the first thing I would say. The second recommendation I would give you is, since you are on the very front end, right now today, go ahead and envision your dream life. What does the house look like? What does the timeline look like? What do all those things look like? and define what that is and write that down. We want to be able to do this and do this and do this and do this. And then you work towards that goal. And you have an income that's going to allow you to work towards that goal. But as you begin to see the numbers grow from $500,000 to $1 million to $2 million to $3 million, you're going to notice it's going to be really easy to push those goals out. If you can really remember what that dream life was today, 10 years from now, when you hit it, you're not going to feel the anxiety around, oh, I'm not doing enough, or I need more. 5 million was a great goal, but now I need 7.5 million. And then 7.5 is good, but I need 10. It will allow you to constantly keep yourself grounded. Hey, remember, this is the dream life we said we wanted to live. Hey, we are there. We're now living that. We don't need more. We don't need to do more. Everything else above and beyond this is just gravy. If you can do those things to keep yourself grounded, as you move towards it, the anxiety will naturally get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller.
Margo, because you're a professional in this. But you'll understand where I'm coming from with this is because I think if we unpack this, first take the dynamic of saving versus spending. Majority of Americans have no problem with consumption. And I would even be willing to say it seems like we're addicted to consumption or spending. And then you have somebody like Chuck come along who his life, he's actually been rewarded by becoming addicted to saving. If you think about early in his career or starting out, he gets out of high school, he goes to college, he's got to be as lean as possible because that means the leaner he is, the less his student loans will be. And then he, even when he goes through residency, the leaner he lives his life, the more reward it seems like it's paying. So he gets addicted to saving. And there's no support groups to people who are addicted to saving. Is because you become empire builders, you become extremely successful. But this is where we as financial advisors deal with this constantly because we have an entire client load of people who are addicted to saving because there's all these feedback loops that this has probably been the thing that has created lots of positives in your life. And so, but it becomes potentially an unhealthy thing. That's why I say there's a big difference between being a financial mutant, which is an optimizer, versus a financial miser, which lets the money become the idol and the things that give you trouble with it. Now, y'all aren't in the bad phase yet because I want to tell you what I would do to address this going forward. And this is what a good financial advisor will do, is because a lot of people think, like you remember if you watch financial content in the 90s, a lot of the public content that you saw on TVs, on the cable channels, was this advisor, and she would just yell no at everything. If you want to go to Hawaii, no, you can't go to Hawaii. Do I get a new car? No, you get. So everybody thinks that financial advisors tell everybody no. Our big job is to kind of unpack people's savings behaviors and their inability to consume and help them still live their best life. So here's the things I use to kind of break this.
Okay.
Is I run the numbers. Bo talked about doing the net worth, but also, before you hire a financial advisor, we have the reason we even crafted the course, if you go to learn.moneyguy.com, is the Know Your Number course, is so people would have some type of tool to put in all their assets, put in their growth objectives and assumptions, the inflation assumptions, and then see how big the number is going to be. And so that way you can look at it and be like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Why am I worried about if we just keep doing this? Because, by the way, even though I picked on you about this debt, the reality is if you didn't come see us, your income is big enough and your discipline is big enough, you're going to be successful just off the raw, discipline and determination of what you've done. It's just we're trying to help you optimize it.
Yeah.
But it's also, and that's just one component, but it's also making sure this component of anxiety or inability to enjoy spending causes detrimental problems in the future. So if you run the numbers, it's going to give you permission to enjoy. And I've already used one of these components. Another thing I said, I want you to pretend to be your future self. And Bo kind of talked about this too. And he said, what is the goal of where you're going? How big is the house? What do the vacations look like? Go ahead and chart that path now so that you can, in a healthy way, think about who you want to be and start challenging yourself to get outside your comfort zone and actually start living that life now so that you don't have regret. Everything is about not having regrets, because I want you to be, I think there's this, y'all aren't there yet because you're still in your 30s. When I got in my 40s, I became so sentimental. And now I'm in my 50s and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's even worse because now my oldest daughter's in college And the life is cruel because your kids go to college and you become so sentimental, and yet they're becoming more independent. And so you're going to have lots of time to reflect on this stuff. And I just want to make sure that you don't have regrets, because and I don't get the feeling, it sounds like your brilliant employer has structured a job where you get quality life balance. You're not giving all of your life to your career. You're being able to be a good father, good husband. But I just want to make sure that you're doing that on the financial side as well, so you don't wake up one day and go, you know what, we should have done more things while our son was at home, or we should have done more things to make memories as a couple. So jump into your future self to make sure you don't have regrets.
Okay. No, I like that, because I mean, that's what I like. And I worry about that too, is like, I think I asked you last night before we went to bed, I said, is there something we could change? Like, should we save maybe a little less, like a couple percent less, and like go do more things? Like, would that make us happier? And she's like, no, we're doing everything we want.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I think is
It's a great place to be.
No,
It's
I
a
mean,
great
we're
place to be.
extremely
Yeah.
lucky that, if we haven't said that already, we are
we're-
extremely lucky.
Extremely fortunate. Like, I don't know what to say.
I think, like, even though, like, drilling down a little bit more on that point, though, is like, we're doing all the things we want to do, but even like within those events, right, or experiences that we're building, right, like, obviously if you go on a trip, it's amazing you can go on the trip, and like, then if it's like, oh, well, let's stay at a place that's $100 more a night because it's more comfortable, we'll have a separate spot for the baby, whatever. Or, well, overall, we'd save $500 if we stay at this in this closet.
Yeah.
Like, be like, well, we're fine in a closet. Which, like, we are fine in a closet, and like that would be fine. But I think, like, I don't know, I would love if you can start thinking about some of, like, on that level. Not that, like, we need to be doing more experiences or things like that, but optimizing what we
Yeah, look at that.
are doing already, you know?
And then it's being on the same page. It's like,
Yeah.
hey,
Yeah.
why don't, instead of this year, instead of us doing these 3 trips, let's do 2 trips. Let's do them maybe nicer than we've done them in the past. Let's stay in the nicer place, or let's fly the better ticket, or whatever that thing is for you guys. That's going to be a marital communication thing that y'all have, because you may need to feel comfortable saying, hey, we're going to spend the same amount of money overall, but we're going to spend it on less things, and we're going to do it nicer. I think that's okay. You guys are going to have to define where that middle ground exists and how it satisfies both of you.
Totally.
It's fun things to figure out as a marriage.
Yeah, no, I feel like we're both pretty flexible, so we
Yeah.
can meet in the middle, which is good.
Well, I know we're coming to a close. I will say one final thing, and then I'll close this out, is that something that I've loved about life is, if you heard about the hedonic treadmill, it's where, if you spread out, you're supposed to do bad things as fast as possible because you adjust to your happiness level, but good things you should spread out. So I love, maybe every year you go on a vacation, kick it up a little bit more so you don't get too established on how bougie you are too early. But it's just every time, it gives you a little bit more enjoyment, and it gets to be renewed and refreshed for each of you.
So this year
that's
we
pretty
take
funny.
the airline where they charge you to breathe, but
There
next
you-
year
that's
we
right.
take the one
We
where
get first
you
check
get-
back for free. I love it. All right, are you ready for your homework? I got some homework items. You ready? These are all fun ones. First order of homework. I would increase my emergency fund based on where you guys are. I think having 6 months of liquid cash, 6 months of living expense in liquid cash makes a lot of sense. I'd revisit my asset location. I think if you looked at the types of investments you hold and the types of accounts, you are not optimal right now. I think you can move some stuff around. You can keep the same allocation, but just locate them differently, and you're likely be in a better position. I think that you ought to rework your current savings strategy. Rather than prioritize paying off all that debt this year as fast as possible, we might recommend taking advantage of other opportunities like backdoor Roth, so that way you actually get your money working for you at some interest rate greater than 0%. And then these are the last 2. Number 1, get together and define your today goals. What are our goals for this year that we want to accomplish? Whether that be travel, experiences, giving, whatever that is, and then define, okay, what are our long-term goals? How can we accomplish both without one making us sacrifice the other? And then rinse and repeat that every single year, and you will begin to move towards your great, big, beautiful tomorrow.
Great.
Love it. We love homework.
You love homework.
Chuck, Margo, y'all have been awesome. This has been a blast. We've really enjoyed. You came on, shared all this information. I will tell you, I really enjoy embracing just the journey y'all are in. And I can't wait to hear the updates as y'all reach more and more success. I know all of you out there in the audience, hopefully you guys also have learned from what Chuck and Margo have shared today. But if people wanted to join and become part of Making a Millionaire, what do they need to do?
If you'd like to be a guest on Making a Millionaire, you can go to moneyguy.com/apply. Or if you'd like to talk about if you'd like to see any of the resources that we talked about today, you can go to moneyguy.com/resources.
Well, guys, this has been a blast. I'm your host, Brian Preston, joined by Mr. Bo Hansen. Money Guy team, out.
Making a Millionaire is hosted by Brian Preston and Bo Hansen. Brian and Bo are partners at Abound Wealth Management. Abound Wealth Management is a registered investment advisory firm regulated by the Securities and Exchange Commission in accordance and compliance with the securities laws and regulations. Abound Wealth Management does not render or offer to render personalized investment or tax advice through Making a Millionaire. The information provided is for informational purposes only, may not be suitable for all investors, and does not constitute financial, tax, investment, or legal advice. All investments involve a degree of risk, including the risk of loss. The guests featured on Making a Millionaire are not clients of Abound Wealth Management at the time of recording. Their participation should not be considered a testimonial or endorsement of Abound Wealth Management.